Hey, Lashpreneurs, happy Monday to you. This episode is coming to you from Monterey, California, where I am attending an event called Thriver Society Live. If you've been listening to this podcast for at least a year ago, my friend Britt Seva, who is the hairstylist business coach, so kind of the hairstylist version of me, interviewed me on this podcast. Britt and I go back several years. We've only met in person once, and she had asked me to attend her basically her membership, her group coaching programs live event, and she goes all out for this. So I was like, a hell yes, coming to this thing, because as somebody who wants to put on live events and I'm like actively trying to pursue putting on live events, this is like the gold standard that, I'll get to someday. So it's been an honor just even being here. This has only been one day of 3 to watch her work, to watch her in her zone of genius. I mean, I've connected with her many times online. We text back and forth, but to really be immersed in her community has just been incredibly inspiring for me, and also just kind of gives me a different perspective on what community really looks like. So Britt, if you're listening, thank you for inviting me. This has been so amazing, and I can't wait to see the rest of the time. So one thing that was coming up today, as I was listening to these hairstylists kind of speak to different issues they were having. This is all business building, business education, business continuing education. So they're very much the same types as you, and some of you may even be hairstylists. One thing that really resonated with me that one of the speakers said was talking about empathy. Because so much of what we try to do online, sometimes we feel like we have to be a certain way, or we have to be professional. And I use quote marks in that, of just coming across to a certain level that somebody else would be happy with. Most of us identify as people pleasers, or recovering people pleasers. And oftentimes when we feel like somebody is upset with us, we go on the defensive, right? So if they're upset or if they're unhappy, we feel threatened, like, oh my gosh, I've upset them, or something I've done has caused them to react a certain way. So today's episode is really going to be a different perspective that I want to offer you on handling upset clients. And I think something that is both a gift and a curse that I am really good at, if I can say so, is empathy. And I've found over the years, as my empathy has gotten stronger, how many people actually lack the skill set of being empathetic towards someone. So what is empathy? Well, there's a bunch of different definitions. My definition is understanding somebody else's perspective and being able to put yourself in their shoes to understand why they are the way that they are, or why they behave the way that they behave. And I find so much, especially in today's culture, and especially in the beauty industry, a lot of business owners lack the empathy piece. They tend to go straight to victim, or they go to blame, right? When you're blaming somebody, you're acting as the victim, like they've wronged me, I need to attack. So I'll give you an example of what this might look like, and you'll probably have your gut response of how you would respond to this situation. Then I'm going to offer you an empathy approach to that situation. When a client gets unhappy, right? They don't like the results. They don't like what you did. They didn't like the experience. There's two things that you offer in your business for the client. It's the experience and the results, right? And those are two things that you have a lot of control over, whether you think you do or not. But they're also what a client would be upset with if their expectations of the results weren't met, or their experience wasn't great. And so what can happen is that they then tell others about their bad experience by way of, let's just use the example of like leaving you a bad review, or kind of blowing you up online, or like, just being nasty in front of other people. So we'll use the online review. So, you get the notification. It's probably not an inconvenient, or not a convenient time for you when you're like in a good mental health space, ready to take on whatever comes your way. It's likely you're distracted. You see an email of a review come up and you're like, cool, review. You go read it and it's like tearing you apart. And you're just like, you go into what is called fight or flight, right? Your heart rate starts picking up, your mind starts racing, you start going into fear, maybe you're breathing faster. It's anxiety, right? Because you feel threatened by this bad review, because now what was a personal experience between you and a client is now being shared with others. And this leads you down the thought of like, oh my God, what is this going to do to my business? If you're not completely aware of the thoughts and how to manage and navigate your thoughts, you probably go into a spiral of negativity of like, what if other people read this? I'm going to lose business. My business is going to shut down. This is going to destroy me. Like all this catastrophic thinking, right? And if we are not present to being able to control our thoughts, we very easily go down this negative mindset path. And oftentimes if you don't have a whole lot of emotional regulation or are even aware that you can control your emotions and calm yourself down, that you're in an anxious state, you tend to react in that state rather than wait till you physically calm down, think through what you want the result to be, and then respond accordingly. You just react, fight or flight. Those of you that react by responding back to that client with some equal level of vitriol and hate and aggression or whatever, and cattiness and bitchiness and blame, or you showed up late, or trying to put it back on the client like they're the problem and they're the wrong person. We live in an online world. As soon as you put something online, it can forever be online. Even if you delete it right away, if she saw it and took a screenshot of it, there's no going back from that. Not to say that you can't recover, not to say that people haven't been canceled and then uncanceled, but it is something that when you respond, when you react out of emotion, you're not using logic. So for a basic general understanding of what's happening in your head, there is the front of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, that is what is in charge of executive functioning. That is basically your logic center, your tasks, your logic, right? There is your fight or flight response, totally blanking on the little gland that drives hormones that basically takes your prefrontal cortex offline and puts you into survival mode. This is why you get the hormones released in your body that then trigger the anxiety, because your brain is telling your body, you're threatened right now. We need to get out of this situation. You either need to fight your way out or you need to flee. So if you get criticism by way of a negative review and all you want to do is hide and stay in your room with the covers over your head, you tend to default to a flee response. You just want to hide. You don't want to deal with it. You just want to escape. Those of you that want to attack back and hurt that person that hurt you, you tend to go more towards a fight response. Either way is not conducive to getting you the result. So a perspective shift that I want to offer you, something that you can put into your brain when this type of situation happens, because inevitably, the bigger you grow, the more clients you have, you're going to have somebody who is going to be upset. Is this key thing that's missing is the empathy piece. Why would someone leave a bad review? Specifically talking about the beauty industry in general, but specifically even lashes. Why would somebody leave a bad review? Well, likely that there was an expectation that they had coming in that wasn't met. But I want to go even deeper on that, because I think that's surface level, I didn't meet their expectations, maybe I need to communicate better. But think about what it is that you do. What is the result somebody is looking for? When we're in the beauty industry, what we are doing is affecting how someone views themselves in the world and how other people view them and how they view that other people view them. It's a very, very personal thing. It is not something that is just kind of let's see, even if you got a Brazilian wax and it got jacked up, there's one other person, maybe a couple other people that might notice, but it's not like you're walking out the door and everybody's like, oh, they know what happened, unless you're walking like a cowboy, but that's aside from the point. What you do is on somebody's face. So every time they look in a mirror, they see you. Every time they get on their phone or take a picture, they're reminded of you. Every time they are talking to someone, they are aware of where that person's eyes are going and if they're focusing on a certain point. So that can work to your advantage, right? That's kind of the addictive piece of what you offer, is that if you do it well and they feel beautiful and they feel sexy and they feel confident, they're hooked, they're addicted. But if you mess up just a little bit, they're going to be constantly thinking about you because they don't feel confident, sexy, beautiful. Can you imagine what that experience might feel like? Especially if it makes them, if they already came in feeling, we'll just say ugly, not beautiful, not desirable, not attractive. That has nothing to do with you, but they are looking to you to fix that solution. Now, some of that stuff is some inner work, right, that they need to do, but you become then the person who's supposed to save them. And if you don't do that to their standards, which, right, again, not something that you can control per se, but then you become the target of making them feel that way, even though they likely already felt that way coming in. So this empathy piece, at some point, all of us have felt undesirable, unattractive, ugly, whatever. In fact, if you're watching the video of this, like I am just a hot mess of just like being at a conference for 9 hours, whatever. We're just in this together. It's more important you hear what I have to say than what I look like. However, a lot of people would never step foot outside without looking a certain way. Especially if they feel like they're receiving rejection or criticism from other people based on something that you did. So if you jack up their lashes, if they look really awful, or they just don't feel like they look good, even though you're like, the work is flawless, it looks beautiful, I did exactly what you said, but they don't feel beautiful. I mean, how do you feel when you don't feel beautiful? And can you imagine what that would feel like if somebody, I don't want to say did that to you, but essentially that's what they're thinking, is like, they're pointing the finger at you of like, you made me look this way. You make me feel the way that I'm feeling. So I want to then in turn react instead of responding, right? They're in fight or flight mode. They feel like you have threatened their ability to be attractive and presentable in the world. They're then going to react out of emotion and try to hurt you back in the only way that they feel they can to get your attention or to hurt you, right? Emotionally. So it's a pretty powerful thing to mess with somebody's appearance. And that's what you've all signed up for, is messing with someone's appearance. Now, most of the time, what we offer makes women feel beautiful. It's, especially with eyelash extensions, it's a very attractive result, right? Because the eyes are such a huge part of someone's face, and like where people connect with them is eye contact. But when they start to feel ugly and they start to feel unattractive, it brings out some not so pleasant responses. And so you'll have some clients that just won't ever talk to you again. They won't come back, right? Because they didn't like how they looked. And so they're avoiding you. They're doing the flee. Then you have some clients that like want to make sure that they got your attention and that you were going to pay for the way that you made them look and feel. So when we have that perspective of what the client's experience is like when they go to do something that seems really aggressive and hurtful by leaving a bad review and like really laying into you, how can empathy help you get the result that you want? So obviously the ideal result is that client left happy, right? And felt beautiful, right? I think we're all looking to create that kind of transformation for someone, that they leave looking and feeling their best. Sometimes we're going to miss the mark, and that's okay. So how do we still have an interaction pretty much with anybody in our lives from a place of empathy? And that's putting yourself in their shoes, taking ownership of what your role was in their experience. You don't have to take the full blame and the full responsibility, but you diffuse someone's fight or flight response when they feel heard or they feel understood. Most people who are reacting and like lashing out and doing that kind of behavior want to feel understood. They just want to feel heard. Some clients have tried, right, to feel heard, to feel understood, to feel like somebody is paying attention to me because I'm hurting and I'm struggling here. And most of you all just jump on the defense of like, this client's crazy, fire this client. And it's like, they felt ugly and they had a moment of like being really upset about that. It's something relatable that we can come from a place of empathy. Now we still have boundaries, right? We still don't have to have them in our business, especially if they're being nasty to us. But I think it would do the world a better place in your business, serving your business well, if you can come from a place of empathy, of at least trying to understand why somebody would do that, because it likely is very little to do with you personally and more about what they're experiencing, and how can we get to the root of what they're experiencing to at least validate their experience. I'm so sorry that the results that you were looking for from this service didn't meet your expectations. As you can, I know we tried to talk about this over the phone, and I can tell you're still upset. Please let me know if there's anything I can do. I totally understand that, we didn't meet the bar for your expectations. We're reviewing our processes, and thank you so much for your feedback, right? If you can come from a place of gratitude for the feedback they're giving, because that's all it is. It's just feedback. The more weight you put it and more meaning you put onto a bad review, the more it's going to control your own emotional state for you to make not so great decisions and react according to feeling threatened, rather than this was one client's experience. It's not the ideal experience. And we are looking into how we can fix our client experience so that this doesn't happen again, or we have much more positive reviews coming in after that. So that's my challenge to you. And if you struggle with empathy, hit me up in the DMs and let me know, like, empathy is something I struggle with, or I don't even know where to begin with empathy, or, hey, how do I apply empathy to the situation with this client? Because 99% of your clients, you should never have to fire. You should never have to put these boundaries in place because the expectations are set from the get-go, and that you are coming from a place of empathy to make sure that what your business is doing is actually creating more positive and more good than it is negative and bad. All right, that's my episode for today, guys. Have a good one.